Hey, what's going on? I hope everybody is doing well this 4th of July weekend. I hope you're getting some fireworks planned, some cookouts. Nothing better than the aroma of a nice cookout. Amazing food, gathering together with friends and family. And therefore, first, before I start this episode, I want to say how thankful I am to enjoy the independence that this country has provided me, the independence to do this podcast, the independence to continue to achieve everything that I want to accomplish in life. There's many countries out there that you're not given that kind of independence to do that. So I'm very thankful for that independence. And therefore, I hope you have a happy 4th of July and you take a moment to as well appreciate the freedoms that this country has provided you, and no matter what walk of life that you're in, all the great benefits that's provided. So in order to appreciate this independence, I want to take this week's episode to provide some actionable steps that you can do to ensure that no matter how old you are, you can be taking deliberate, and I mean deliberate, steps to achieve your financial independence. So there's two things that I want to address, two of them, right here up front on this topic, because I'm going to go through these different decades of life, and I want two things to be very well addressed up front. First, as I'm going through this, you could begin to feel like that you're, like, quote, air quotes, behind, right? Because you may be in your 30s, and I'm going to say there's things that you should have done in your 20s, and you could feel left behind, right? But I want to tell you that it's okay. It's okay to be in your 30s and to not have done some of the stuff that you're supposed to do in your 20s. At no point during this episode do I want you to feel like you're left behind. I actually want to encourage you to instead move that same energy toward taking action today. All that energy of feeling left behind, move that to, I want to start making some change today. Because if we're honest about your situation, if you let that feeling of being behind overwhelm you, you decide to do nothing instead, you're just going to be further behind, right? So it's exactly the most important thing you can do is to take action today. The second, if you are in your 20s and you've completed everything that I go over today, go ahead and start doing the things in your 30s that I go over, okay? So the great thing about this whole entire list is that you can push through it as fast as you want. Not as slow as you want, but as fast as you want. So that's the great thing. What's the reward? Well, you can just create financial independence sooner, right? Before this proclaimed retirement age. So anything that you want to be, you can be, depending on your how hard you work, right? So if you work harder, you will retire faster. I mean, that's just the way it is. And this is an important topic. And now I want to start off, before I jump into the different decades of life and things that you could be doing in those different decades. I want to show you how important this is. The average American has saved this much money by each retirement age. And I'm going to go through each one. 20s, roughly 16,000. 30s, roughly 45,000. 40s, roughly 63,000. 50s, roughly 117,000. 60s, 172,000. So what's the goal? Well, the rule of thumb is you should have about 8 to 10 times your annual salary by the time you're in your 60s. So you can see, based off of these numbers, the numbers I mentioned, which use the 60s, 172,000, the average, that's enough for retirement to have an annual income of about 17 to 28,000. Poverty level in 2021 was about 13,000. So the average American right now is retiring with enough money to be just above poverty level. And that's why this is so important. That's why it's so important for you to understand some of the things that you should be doing at each decade or each point in your life, and start to work those things so that you're constantly moving forward, and trying to ensure that you're set up for success in the end. So let's get right to it. So in your 20s, let's just be upfront. This is where, in my opinion, you are the most exposed. And what do I mean by that? Well, at this point in life, you're going to start making real money. But you're also going to feel this like pressure to adapt to your situation. And this usually comes in the form of debt. So student loans, buying new cars, credit card debt, etc. But you could also use this real money to start working towards your financial independence. And that's what we're going to get to. But as you can see, just with those two things, you have the ability to work toward financial independence, but you also have the ability to go massively in debt. There's this huge, like, you have the most to gain, but you also have the most to lose type of thing. Okay. So don't waste this time not building this very structured foundation to set yourself up for success, to retire sooner or quit working sooner, whatever your goals are. If you're in your 20s and you're like, I want to have financial independence sooner, I want to have financial freedom sooner, here's the things that you should be working on. Here's a couple of the things. There's tons of things that you can be doing in your 20s. Like it's like I said, it's a huge opportunity with the most to gain, but also the most to lose. Number one thing you can do at this point in your life is to stay out of debt. Do not go into debt. The easiest way to start building a strong financial future is to not take steps backwards. And debt is doing just that. It is moving you farther from zero, the wrong direction. It is taking you into the negatives of finances. You owe people money. You're spending money that you don't have, okay? If you're already in debt, no matter your age, there's a series that I'm starting next week. Make sure to tune into that. It's a Get Out of Debt series, and that's going to be crucial and important for you to tune into if you are in debt, no matter your age. After that 4-week series, 4 parts, 4-week series, you will have all the tools necessary to get yourself out of debt and get yourself out of debt faster. So catch that series starting next week. Number 2, so number 1 will stay out of debt. Number 2 thing you can do in your 20s is live below your means. And I think, this is just me, but I think this is where 20-year-olds are the most vulnerable. In your 20s, there is this like invisible pressure to sort of show the world who you are. You're fresh out of the house, you're maybe in college or getting out of college, you're going into the workforce. And this whole thing, all of this can lead to this pressure. You got to have the pressure to have the newest car. You got to have the pressure for the brand name clothes. You have this idea that these are all like symbols of that you're like status, or like status symbols, I guess you could say. And overspending becomes what you do to get status, right? Yet in the end, you just end up broke, right? You just end up broke with a lot of things, and that's just truthfulness. So don't fall into the trap. I promise you, in the end, you will end up with a lot of stuff you don't actually want, and you're broke. And you'll look back on it and say, wow, I wasted a ton of money, but you also waste a ton of time, right? You have a ton of time wasted by trying to get status, to try to have brand names and new cars and all these things for people to look at you through this certain light, right? So that's number 2, is you've got to live below your means. You can't go out spending all of your money in your 20s for this status, okay? Number 3 is build your emergency fund up front. All right. And this is the perfect time to start building your emergency fund, because you don't have kids, most likely. You don't have a mortgage, or most likely. Hopefully you're not in debt yet, and I'm catching you before you've gotten yourself in debt. And you have the time and the money to start putting money into a savings account. And yes, I said savings account. This account is not about growth. It's not about growing. It's about access. It's about having access to this money. It's an emergency fund. And the goal is to have, at this point in your 20s, about 3 months worth of expenses on hand at any time. So if you're doing that, if you've done that, great. you're one step ahead. If you have not done that, that's where it's time to start moving towards it. 3 months of expenses on hand at any time, and that's the goal here. Okay. Number four here is to start investing your leftovers. So if you have done all of these things, you've got your 3 months of expenses saved up, you can start hitting some investments. You can start growing that money. And I know you always hear people say it, but they always say, if only I would have started earlier in life, I look what I would have now. There's calculators out there that show you, if you would have just started doing this, in your 20s, now that you're in your 60s, this is what that would have been. And it's always millions, right? Like it's always millions. So there, you're literally throwing away millions for status. You're throwing away millions for debt. You're throwing away millions for what? Yeah, I know. It's a good question. Like there's millions of dollars in your future if you just do these things now. Okay. Like you will be a millionaire if you'll do these things now. All right. So, you have the opportunity to change it. So do it. You're in your 20s. Go do it. Open a brokerage account. Start putting money into mutual funds. At this point in life, I think it's more about building the muscle of saving and wealth building and investing than it is the actual return, because you have time. Time's on your side. So it's more about building the habit, building that muscle where you're used to saving, you're used to putting money into investments, you're used to doing that. And all of this will pay off later on in life. And as we get through the different decades, you'll see that it starts to pay off. So in your 30s, so we've jumped from our 20s to our 30s, and this is where life starts to look like this average American dream. Life starts to pick up. Life starts to show itself. You've got kids. You've got a mortgage. Your monthly expenses are starting to add up. You're probably settled into your career field for the most part. Maybe some changing along in the career field, but that's just life, right? But you probably have an idea of what career you're headed down. And all this means that what you did in your 20s is probably starting to show up as either hurting you or benefiting you, right? If you had that 3-month emergency fund, that's probably benefiting you. If you had tons of debt, it's probably now hurting you. So pay off your debt from your 20s. Having a nice nest egg of an emergency fund and a small investment account, these are all things that are going to benefit you. If you had debt and you paid it off in your 20s, perfect. You got a nice nest egg, you got a nice emergency fund, you got a small investment account. And I will say this though, if you're in your 30s and you're just now getting focused on finances, you have work to do, but it's far from impossible. Okay. It just takes action. It just takes time. It just takes action. So what should you be focused on? You're in your 30s, all of these things we talked about. What should you be focused on? Well, number one, you should be watching your budget. It's more important now than in your 20s, just being honest. If you aren't budgeting, it's important that you start doing this now. The 50-30-20 budget is going to be your best friend to ensure that you're heading in the right direction financially. Down in the description of this video or this podcast, depending on how you're enjoying this, I did post a link for a video that I did on the 50-30-20 budgeting, so you can see how to set that up if you're not familiar with it. Number two, so budgeting, 50-30-20 specifically. Number two is grow that emergency fund. If you haven't set it up, it's time to set it up. And now it gets tougher. Because in your 20s, we were pushing for 3 months of expenses, right? Now that we're in our 30s and we have kids and we have dependents, liabilities, or a liability if you lost your job or something. There's a liability factor here. You have more expenses. You have a mortgage. You have all these things. That's increased your chances of an emergency happen. It's giving you more surface area for an emergency to happen. So at this point, you actually need to bump your 3 months up to 6 to 12 months of expenses. COVID tested a lot of emergency funds, right? Commission jobs test your emergency fund. So if you're worried about a future pandemic, or if you're worried about future issues, if you're worried about inflation, if you're worried about if you're on a commission-based job, a bigger emergency fund is necessary. So maybe 12 months of expenses is necessary, but that's number two. Number two is you've got to grow that emergency fund in your 30s. You've got to get that emergency fund higher. So number 3, max out your retirement options. You've got to max those out. At this point, we're no longer investing like little baby like beer money into our investment accounts. We're now, that's what we did in our 20s, and we're now going all in on investments. This means investing like your 60s depends on it, because it really does. If your employer offers a 401k match, contribute up to that match. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2, after you've done that, fully fund your retirement account, IRA account, Roth IRA account specifically. As of today, July 4, 2021, the max is $6,000 for those under 50, $7,000 if you're older than 50. If you have more money to invest after you've done your company match, you maxed out your IRA, you have a $19,500 limit on your 401k, $26,000 if you're over 50. So put that in there. Get all the way up to $19,500 in that 401k every year, on top of the $6,000 you have to go into your retirement account. But that's after you've maxed out the IRA and you're contributing up to your match for your company. But the goal at this point is to be saving about 15% of your gross income for retirement. And that's number 3. That's maxing out your retirement options. Number 4 is to start saving for kids' college. This is an extra. And I say this is an extra because your kids may or may not go to college. I'm just being real, I'm being honest. Maxing out the retirement is your priority. If there's money left over, put that toward your kids' college fund. Okay? That's how this whole thing works. Don't give up your retirement for your kids to go to college, and you give up your retirement for them to go to college. It shouldn't work that way. Set your family up for success. Start this early. You're in your 30s. You've got time. But start getting this retirement put together. Start doing all this. And if you have extra, put that toward the kids' college. Now, we're on to the 40s. Oh, yeah, the magical 40s. Here we go. So 40s are considered your peak earning years. This is where you are most likely earning the most money that you've earned in your life. And if you're building other avenues to earn money along the way, your earning potential could increase. But in your 40s, this is at this point, all your hard work you did in your 20s and 30s is now paying off. You're seeing it. You're probably in the prime of raising children. You probably have aging parents. All of this are things to consider about finances. So preparing for all this is important for your long-term financial independence. So what should you do? Well, the first thing is being honest with reality. You need to talk to your parents. So at this point, you need to know what your parents' retirement is looking like, because you have no idea what you don't know until you realize that you didn't know, right? Just having that conversation, just ensuring that you understand what their plan is for retirement is important for your planning, because getting hit with something unexpected is not what you want here. You don't want to derail your whole retirement because you get hit with some kind of huge bill or something that happens. If a parent passes away and then all of a sudden you're left with a bill that you knew nothing about, right? So have a conversation with your parents, understand what's going on, what their financial situation looks like, and how to deal with that. So number 2 is to continue to max out retirement savings. Like I stated, this is the prime earning years of your life, and you should be going all in on retirement. Speaking of retirement, if you've been putting all this time and effort into building the account, I repeat, do not borrow from your retirement account for anything, for nothing. Don't touch your retirement account. Not your 401k, not your IRA. Do not borrow money from that. This is not your emergency fund. You have an emergency fund. We've built that, right? We started in our 20s or 30s and we're building that, right? Don't touch your retirement account as an emergency fund, okay? Don't touch it. It's not meant to draw money from. It's not a savings account. It's your retirement account. Draw it when you're at a retirement age and you can start to take that money out. Number 3 is you can start putting more effort into your kids' college fund. Here you can start putting more money into your kids' college fund because at this time, your kids will be quickly approaching that age. Once again, do this after you've maxed out your retirement accounts, but in your prime earning years, this is an opportunity to start doing that. and it'll pay for itself. Number 4 is pay down your mortgage. You want to retire completely debt free, and that includes your mortgage. So even putting an extra $200 to $500 a month could knock down your mortgage about 2 to 3 years, just with an extra $200 to $500 a month, right? So I mean, that's huge. Knock 2 to 3 years off your mortgage, just by doing an extra $200 to $500 a month. Okay. So into your 50s. Oh yeah, we are getting on up there. We are getting closer to our retirement age. If you are in your 50s and you have little savings for retirement, you got to turn the gas on, baby. We got to get this thing expedited, okay? Because we have an expedited timeline, and this is going to take some extra work, okay? It's not impossible though. You're going to have to start. You're going to make this whole retirement thing work for you. You just got to be ready, and you got to put in the work. You definitely need to finish this episode and start making moves today. All right. Like, finish this episode and then start making moves to build this retirement. So what should you do? Well, number 1, continue to max out your retirement plans. As I talked about earlier, at this point, you're going to have higher limits, and you should contribute up to those limits, and continue putting all the money you can to these retirement vehicles. You need to, at this point, if you've been putting into your retirement accounts all along since 20s, 30s, 40s, you should be able to start diversifying your investments. At this point, you should be completely debt-free or almost debt-free, and probably have some extra cash coming in at this point. So it's time to find some other vehicles to start putting your money into. This could be the stock market, which gives you about a 7% return on average. You can start getting involved in real estate. You can start getting, you could put money into mutual funds and a brokerage account. Like, there's plenty of options out there. But planning that out and start moving your money into different investment strategies is worth your weight in gold, I'm telling you. And then number 3 is downgrade your lifestyle. In your 50s, it's time to downgrade your lifestyle. If your kids are out of the house, maybe move into a smaller home is a good idea. That'll provide you some extra cash flow from the difference in the downgrade. But anywhere you can cut at this point is beneficial to you, because it lowers the amount that you need to retire and maintain that same lifestyle. Okay. So the 50s is a time to not take your foot off the gas, but a time to just press harder. All right. So now we're in our 60s and beyond. All right. This is like the Buzz Lightyear years. Okay. The 60s and beyond. At this age, in terms of society's definition, you are at retirement age, and everything you have set for retirement is kind of set in stone. So start enjoying retirement that you built. If whatever you got at this point, and the only decision you have here is, what about Social Security? So I'm going to give you some pointers on Social Security. I'm not here to advise you in any way on what you should do about your Social Security if you're 60 or older, well, 62 or older technically. But here's the thing. Here's the rundown, and I'm just going to give it to you straight. So you can start drawing Social Security at 62. But should you draw it at 62? Well, that's up to you. The amount you receive is based on when you start receiving your benefits. So if you wait until 70 instead of 62, you get about 8% more money every year than you did if you would have started drawing at 62. So just an option, but for couples, if you need the extra at that time, good idea to try is to start drawing at 62, and that gives you some extra income. And then the other, wait that out as long as they can. If you can wait till 70, that's awesome. But if you can, if you end up needing the more money at like 65, you could draw at 65 for that second partner. But one draw at 62 and the other one wait it out. That's just a plan, right? Try to get to 70 if you can. But this is the point where you've got to start making some decisions for what's best for you and your family, and that's just an advice. You can draw to 62, go right ahead. But if you can wait it does pay you more money to wait. Okay. So this is what I want to say right here as I wrap up the 60s. This is what I want to say. Everything that you did in your 20s, I know that was like 25 minutes ago. You were 20, right? But everything you did in your 20s till now is what you will have. If you're 20 right now or you're 30 right now, hopefully this is a wake up call. Like this, you know, like if you're 60, you don't have time left. Like you don't have the time to start building retirement accounts. Okay. So this is the point that you'll start hearing people saying, if only I would have started sooner. Like that is a very, very common quote. If only I would have started sooner. So if you are, I have a challenge for you. If you are in your 40s or younger, I have a challenge for you. I encourage you to go and talk to someone that you know that's in their 60s or older. Okay. If you're 40 or younger, 40s or younger, not 40 or younger, but 40s or younger, go talk to someone that's in their 60s. And I guarantee you, no matter their situation, they will provide you two things: great encouragement and great advice. And I'm going to show you why I know that. I know that because if they made solid decisions from 20 or 30 and beyond, they will tell you how much easier it made retirement. And that's encouraging, right? That's encouraging to you because they'll be able to say, if you'll do this, I'm telling you, it pays off. It's worth it. They probably have friends that didn't do it and they can relate, right? If they didn't start saving or investing until later, they're going to tell you they wish they would have started when they were your age. That's what they're going to say. And that's encouraging because that should show you, I need to take, you know, auntie and uncle's advice and say, this is where I should start, you know, building my investments, building my retirement, and let them encourage you. Let them give you the, you know, that knowledge, that encouragement to say, I can start now, or I should start now. It pays off in the end. So this is your path to financial independence. A couple of things I want to leave you with is that if you think you're going to just walk through life and things are just going to fall into place, you will be sadly mistaken. Life is not going to turn out the way that you thought it was going to. If you think you're just going to walk through and retire and life's great and everything's lovely, like you are in an imaginary illusion that you know, there, I just snapped you out of it. No, back to it. You're in reality. Stay there. So retirement and financial independence takes this like deliberate effort. And for those that make that effort will live a long life that's you're not going to be worried about money. Their family and future generations will benefit off of this. Like I started this with, nothing keeps you from speeding this timeline up. If you're completely debt free with a paid off house by age 40, go for it. You are at the age to keep working, and you could build quite a legacy for you and your family. If you wanted to stop working and go pick up some other endeavors to make money other ways, go for it. You're debt free. Like you're living life. Like all you have is like your food and gas expenses. Like, I mean, and health insurance, right? So it's important that first off, that you understand that life is about enjoyment. Like you're supposed to enjoy life, and nothing along this whole journey through all of these decades that we just went through is supposed to take away from your enjoyment of life. But that enjoyment is going to come from your ability to create wealth and give back into others' lives. Give your family the life that you maybe did or didn't have, and understand that that's what this whole thing is about. It's not an easy process. If it was an easy process, I'm telling you, I wouldn't have read those numbers at the beginning and had people that was barely saving enough to retire with. It's not easy, and a lot of people are not going to do it. A lot of people are going to fall behind. But if you're watching this or listening to this, I don't want you to be one of them. So start building this journey today. Don't wait another day. Every day will be another day lost that you could be building this investment muscle. If at any time you're in need of sort of, guiding you or directing you and pointing you in the right direction, I serve as a financial coach that I can help you put in the plan, put in the strategies, put in the ultimate roadmap to get you to where you want to be on what timeline that you see feasible for yourself. Just go to thefinancialmirror.org/contact, fill out the contact form, and I will be in touch with you. So once again, I hope that you have a great 4th of July. And until next week, peace. I'll see you then.